All right, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Yogesh, and quite a good experience listening to all the speakers here so far. And I'm very happy to be talking to you today. Uh, I work with Cygnet Infotech. We are an IT company, and we provide solutions to many industries, including pharma, on any kind of custom application development, process automation. And we have a product called Cygnature, and I'm the product head for that. It basically gives a solution for 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, right, which is something very important for you. I'm personally not a pharma guy, neither a technology guy, but over the last 2-3 years, I've been very deeply involved in this compliance work and developing this solution. So maybe I have something to talk about on this aspect. Right. Okay, so 21 CFR Part 11, this whole law was enacted in 1997. Maybe that time I was just starting off in my college days. That was even before Google was there, or Twitter, or Facebook. None of that was there. But yet the law was enacted for how a pharma company should address requirements on electronic records, electronic signatures, audit trails, and all that. Right? And the things have changed a lot in the last 25 years. Right? And we are all talking about digital transformation and so many changes that are happening on the IT front. Keeping all that in mind, we would expect that the law also will keep in sync with the changes. But it is not so. The law is more or less the same. When I first read the law, it's just maybe 2-3 pages long. And you read it, you won't really make out anything, what to do with it. How do I develop a software based on just those few clauses? It's difficult. But eventually we made something based on our best judgment. However, when we started talking to different companies and their QA heads and IT heads and all, I realized that there's a lot of different viewpoints on how to interpret that law and what comes into it, how to implement it, what is the right way to do it, what will give you the best way to get your signatures or ensure non-repudiation of the approvals and so on. So there are some areas which are gray, and hopefully in my presentation I'll try to address some of them. We'll try to come up with what is the bare minimum requirement for the compliance and see how to implement that. Okay. All right. So, see, normally as a regulated industry, you're supposed to follow all your SOPs and all, and it seems sometimes a very big restriction, and there is a feeling that you are being policed and everything has to follow in that order. However, it's not like that. I think the intention of the regulation is that it should protect public safety and the health of the people who are consuming all the medicines, and that is why they're saying that all your processes should be in accordance to certain rules and guidance. So while the law is very clear, the Code of Federal Regulations, it's quite detailed when it comes to the manufacturing process. But the Part 11 part of it is not very clear. So what does Part 11 do? Part 11 basically refers to how you are creating your electronic records, how you are managing them, editing them, archiving, transmitting, everything of that is included into that. Now what happens, usually whenever the users want to implement some kind of electronic system, or there is pressure to do that, they will go to IT. Maybe you as IT heads, they will come to you, say, try to find out a solution for this. And then you will go to the market, search for some vendors, evaluate all of that. So essentially what the Part 11 says is that the responsibility of assessing a system is not the IT department. It's actually the users who are supposed to do it. So that's one of the things that Part 11 says. Accountability of ensuring that the system performs as per the functionality rests with the business users, the actual users who are going to use it. It's not the IT team. So usually the process that is known as computer systems validation, CSV, is done in joint coordination, and the reason being that if you read the law, let's say for example there is a section 11D which says only authorized users should get access to the system. Now what do you mean by authorized user? You go and ask the business users, they'll say we are all authorized, okay, but then how do you determine unauthorized users should not get access to the system? So it's very difficult to figure out. So IT team and business users need to work together on that, right? And the whole concept of authorization and authentication has also evolved in the last 25 years. Things are changing, the way you do one factor, two factor, multi-factor authentication, so many things are coming up, right? Apart from the basic law, there are several guidances which have been released by FDA over the number of years, but if you see, there are very less. In the last 25 years, maybe 4 or 5, not more. The issue with guidances is that they are not binding. So even if you follow the guidance, it doesn't mean that you are compliant. So if a dispute goes into court, they will refer the law, not the guidance. So you have to be sure that you are following the law. And what the law is not clear. So it's very difficult to figure out what to do. Essentially, Part 11 comprises of 4 things. There is electronic records, signatures, trail, and the security. Electronic records come in various ways. Today I will maybe focus more on the documents part of it, where you need the reviews, approvals, and so on. I will take each and every area of this and kind of explain what it means. So one of the confusion that people have is difference between electronic and digital signatures. Which signature should we use on the documents? So electronic signature is what you can see on the top left. It just is a electronic representation of what you write, and below you see a digital signature. Now this digital signature is issued by a certificate authority, which is more relevant in case of a contract, right? It's not really required for a CFR compliance. All you need is electronic trail of your signature, so electronic signature is good enough. Now what happens when you go out and try to search for a vendor for signatures? Then some of them only give a digital signature, some may give electronic, some may give both. And you may have a requirement to automate your contractual workflows and also a CFR compliance. So obviously you cannot go to multiple vendors. So you will have to figure out whether a single vendor can give both type of signatures or not. The signature appearance comprises of 3 important things. It should have the printed name of the signer, the date and time, which is the timestamp, and the meaning. So meaning is important, and this is part of the compliance requirement, that why is the person signing that document? Is he an author, is he a reviewer, or is he a approver? So that has to be mentioned there. So this is what the law requires. Audit trail and timestamp. So this is an example of an audit trail. So for each and every person who is either creating the document, reviewing or approving it, it should come in a sequence. And one of the important things is what you need to pay attention to is the timestamps and the time zone also, because sometimes people are working in different countries and they are signing and approving a document. So it should not happen that the approver has signed first and the creator has signed second. So because time zones are different, the audit trail should have a clear representation of the sequence in which the signing has happened. Another important thing that many companies always kind of debate is whether to have the system in-house in my own premises, or should I use a cloud. The pressure is always cloud because it's subscription, cost is less, but then just because it is cloud doesn't mean that your responsibility is shifted to the vendor. You have to always remember that the whole responsibility of doing the validation is still with you. You have to ensure that the system performs as you need. There are some more differences between on-premise and SaaS. For example, on SaaS, you have to consider whether the data is secure. Can I download the data back into my premises? How easily I can do that? How can I rely on the vendor's claim whether the system is validated or not? Is it easy to get started? Because on-premise, it will be difficult to get started because you have to install everything, and then sometimes if you want an upgrade or if you want some changes to be done, then you have to wait for a long time. On cloud, it may be faster because the updates come automatically, but then you don't get enough time to validate the system. So these are some of the challenges which you need to consider for your own company and then take a decision. This is again some terminology which is there in the law, like open and closed system. It doesn't really matter today. Even the definitions, if you go and look it up, it doesn't make any sense. The right question today to ask is whether the system is secure and whether it is configurable to meet your needs. So when it comes to security, you know, all the people who have talked so far, I mean, it's a scary world, right? How much secure can we be? Okay, many things to look into that. So for example, there are 43 different things that we need to check in terms of security. I'll just give a few things here. For example, length of password. Now, the basic minimum industry standard is 8 characters. Somebody said it takes only 39 minutes to crack a 8-character password. So maybe we can do 9, 10, 11, but the more you increase the length, the more difficult for people to keep on entering that password. So you have to follow the bare minimum industry standards. So when the law is not clear, what I'm saying is we need to follow the current industry standards on security, and that will only assure us to be compliant. They need to keep track of password expiries. Now normally all these things get taken care of in the Active Directory. You want to set up all the security things into Active Directory, give the authentication to the person, and then ensure that the other systems also follow the same rules. Another important thing is remembering passwords. Now many times we allow the browser to remember the password, so to make it easy for us to log into the system, which is not a good idea actually, because it compromises the system. It creates the opportunity or the risk of non-repudiation. Somebody may say, I have never signed this document. Similarly, you need to keep a track of incorrect login attempts. Single sign-on AD authentication. Single sign-on is again an issue, maybe can create a risk of people saying that I never signed this document, because you go out of your system, somebody comes in, and you are logged into one system and you log into the other system, it automatically gets logged in. So it's a big risk there. So such kind of things need to be taken care of in your SOP. If you're really going in for a system, then for evaluating any kind of vendor, then you can ask certain questions which I've put here. For example, you need to evaluate how electronic records are maintained there, how user security is managed by the system, how the signatures are created and managed. And even for vendor qualification, you need to check their validations, whether they provide support for your UATs and their customers, etc. So using technology definitely is a very important thing for compliance, because it helps you to automate that. It's like you're using, data is getting created, you're compliant, but at the same time you have to ensure that the compliances are being met in the right way. And to do that, you have to follow the industry standards. As per the recent guidance from FDA, you have to do risk-based computer systems validation, which means identify the different risks, and according to the risks, then determine your testing level. And finally, you need to remember that if something goes wrong, the things will come to you, I mean not to the vendor of the software. You are the entity which is regulated. Nobody is going to the software vendor and ask them questions. So you have to ensure that all the things are validated as per your best practice. So we have a software called Cygnature, and we provide this electronic signature workflows and help you become CFR compliant. In case you have any further questions on this and any other part of compliance, please do reach out. We are at the booth outside. Thank you so much. Good talking to you.